Conas is hot too, and we'll go to go and we'll along roll all yet of a go to job.
Hey, Conas tá. Tom Iontok Jager Margaret. We are flat to the mat at the minute, which is great. So yeah, long may it last.
And that's exactly question number one, because Nutrikate seems to be expanding a lot lately. So like, what are the new things that are happening? You're taking on new people, and there's growth in different areas, I'm sure. What are the new facets of the business that you've been working on?
Yeah, so I suppose the main objective has to be, I suppose, steadying the ship after all that was in the pandemic. Like, that was just wild, to say the least, and not in a great way. There was a lot of rocky patches, I suppose, even just from a personal standpoint, and then you've got the business side of things. There was a load of new hurdles maybe that weren't faced before. So the big thing for myself and the team at the minute, I suppose, is getting back into a flow of things again. And thankfully, with some sort of return to normality, that seems to be happening. And I mean, inter-county setups and stuff are all getting underway, which is just a breath of fresh air. And thankfully, over the coming months, there seems to be a lot in the pipeline. So mainly on a client front, there's a few projects, one in particular that I've been chipping away at that's still kind of, I'm going to keep below the radar, but we're hoping to expand maybe in a slightly different direction. But it's all, yeah, I'm chipping away at that, shall we say, for a while, or for the foreseen future. And yeah, just really focusing on getting the pillars, steadied again, so we can keep driving forward, I guess.
I was hoping I was going to get the exclusive there, but I'm obviously
No,
not. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
An open book, and I have to rein it in some instances, because I just give away everything. And I'm like, no, you just slow your roll there and chip away, and you can tell people when it's a bit more of a reality.
But like, it must have been really strange for you, because like Nutrikate previously, before the pandemic, I'd assume most of the stuff that you did was in person, seminars and stuff, and then you had to transition absolutely everything online, and now you're probably trying to balance the two. So that's got to be a new kind of balance to get, even though they're two things that you're familiar with anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, in that instance, like, there was a lot of stuff that that we were doing that I never would have dreamt of doing online. Like, it didn't even enter my head. So when you're forced to do something, obviously you learn very quickly if it's a runner or not. Thankfully, things have proven to be very successful on an online basis, so that's been nice in the sense that it's opened up, maybe it's made us more accessible to more teams, to more individuals around the country, and more corporates and so on. So it's been a nice, I suppose, learning that'll stand to us for sure. But yeah, it was a bit of an adjustment, because, as you mentioned, we do a lot of stuff in person, and I love doing stuff in person. Like, I love meeting people, and I think, while Zoom and the likes are great, it doesn't ever really, it's not the same as sitting in a room with someone, or being out on the ground with people and so on. So yeah, it's been a good addition, definitely, but there is for sure a bit of adjustment along with it.
Yeah, it's hard to develop and connect with people in the same way on a call, I suppose, on a Zoom. It is the next best thing. Like, just because it's not the best thing doesn't mean there's no value in it, but like it is definitely better. I suppose better for different scenarios to connect with someone in person, but when you're trying to do as many things as you are doing, you'd be spreading yourself fairly thin if you were trying to do that all the time, in person all the time. So that's why, I suppose, for all online business people or self-employed people, the online service kind of makes your model more scalable so that you can help more people, because that's the overarching goal. But I'm interested now to know whether, you've touched on there, you're getting the pillars back in place to steady the ship. Do you feel like you're used to being self-employed now and you have found your feet and your flow with it? Or are there still times where you're like, oh, I'm figuring this out, and and learning on the fly, as you said there.
Oh my God, every day is a school day. I'll tell you that much for free. Particularly because I find that you're kind of, as you grow and as you're looking to maybe push the boat out, you're getting loads of new hurdles that like you didn't know even existed, because you're pushing things out. Like, so, over the last number of years, I've, looked to grow and actively sought to do that. And with that comes challenges. So I'm very much learning, as we go. Um, and really, no matter what you read, or, definitely discussing scenarios and learning from other fellow self-employed or entrepreneurs can help, but it doesn't always prepare you for your reality, and it never looks quite the same. So yeah, no, I'm still very much figuring it out. Yeah,
Are you,
still figuring out.
yeah, are you good? We're all winging it at the end of the day. But what I wanted to ask you then is, have you always been good at seeking out that help and asking people how to do different things and taking on different perspectives, or was it something that you've had to work on, being like, I don't know, able to delegate and able to say, look, I'm not the best person to do this. Maybe I should ask for someone else's advice.
Yeah. Well, really, I remember one of the things when I started Nutrikate, was I knew that there were people that, I didn't have a notion how to do different elements of, say, the business or marketing, or even something like logos and stuff. Didn't know what to be doing, where to start. And I was actually so taken aback by how forthcoming people were with help when I asked. Um, and I suppose, like, over the years, maybe through sport as well, if you couldn't do something, or if you're looking to improve in an area, you'd always go to a coach or someone who was better than you so that you can learn from. And I suppose even growing up, I always was learning from older athletes on the team or my peers, for example, and different coaches. There was always something to take on board. So I suppose that side of it, maybe that made it easier for me to go, hey, like, what's the story? Can you help out with this? And as I said, people have been very forthcoming, which has made obviously life easier. And when you get a bit of confidence then, and it makes it easier, I suppose, to ask for help. But I don't generally have a problem asking, if I need it, and if, I kind of recognize my weaknesses at this point. And that's, I suppose, why I like having a team around me, because you try and build your team, and get people who are strong maybe at your weaknesses, and then together you have a really nice force, versus trying to get people who are me times, multiples of me, because that doesn't help. And there's no different thoughts, there's no different maybe perspectives. So yeah, so I think it's important to have that self-awareness piece, to know, yeah, Jesus, I probably need help with this. And then find out who the person is, who's the right fit for that particular case.
And within the team as well, it's good to have a variance of personalities and perspectives. And conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing, because if you've no conflict, then you're not being challenged and it's just yes all the time. And you'll probably find a niche, but you'll just go further and further down that niche, if you get me. You won't really expand outside of that niche. So, has developing that team kind of reduced the stress around work a little bit now that you are able to delegate and ask people for their perspective and ask people to take on things? And then the other thing is, like, I like being in the health and fitness industry as well. Like, when you're in doing your undergrad and your postgrad, there's very, very little that you're taught about management. So how's that been? Like, have you been very much learning on the fly with that too? Or did it come naturally to you?
No, that's definitely a learning process as well, just in the sense that when you build something, it's very difficult to loosen the reins. Definitely at the beginning, like, I mean, when I look back on where I started, when maybe you're getting your first intern in, to where things are now, like, I definitely have got so much better. But that has been a learning process. Like, it's, you know, Nutrikate is very much my baby, and it was definitely a learning curve to try and open up and, to allow people to take control in different areas when you're so used to moving all the parts and so on. So yeah, I have been learning as I've gone along with that. Like, it's funny, like I mentioned sport there, and I do think um that has helped in one respect, in terms of being able to delegate, being able to work within a team and so on. But transitioning, something that I find actually quite natural in a sporting environment, and transitioning that to a business context actually hasn't been as easy as I thought it would. And I don't know if that's because sport is something I've done for so long that it's all just second nature now, and maybe the business element, because it's new and unknown, and there's, as I mentioned, these hurdles that, you're venturing into this unknown for the first time in some instances, depending on what's being thrown at you. But sometimes that natural element can be lost. So I try and, like, I suppose, bring myself back, take a helicopter view, rationalize situations, and then gain perspective on them, because there is a lot of crossover that can stand you on that front. So I just try to remember that. But definitely, like, I mean, what you're taught in college, like, sometimes I question, does it even set you up to work by yourself? Never mind running anything else. But I did do, when I started Nutrikate, actually, I did invest some time and resources into doing like a business kind of course. So that helped, and it was nice. With that, I got to meet other entrepreneurs, and that was nice because you're hearing different stories, and you're also, like you mentioned about, like, we're all winging it. And in one respect, I think no matter where someone is in your idea of success, there's an element where they just feel like they don't know what the hell they're doing, like, that kind of way. And that was actually one massive take home and a breath of fresh air. I remember sitting in learning about everyone's different business, and in the class of entrepreneurs I was with, and there was one woman in particular, and she was going through all that she had achieved in her business, and I was like, Jesus, like, if if I was saying that, I'd be absolutely buzzed. And she is just so successful in my eyes. And I just remember her going, listening all off, and then she's like, and I honestly feel like I don't have a notion about what I'm doing. So I was like, whew. It's not just me. And at this stage, I think, as I mentioned, as you venture and explore, you're bound to kind of rock up in different areas that you're not too familiar with, and you're just doing your best, like.
It's refreshing to hear that, isn't it, really? Because like we all suffer from um we all suffer from imposter syndrome to a different degree, like, and it doesn't fully leave you ever, like, and it's good to hear people that are up, well, what you perceive as above you on the ladder, say that they still struggle with things too. And you said earlier, like, when you first set up the Nutricate brand, you didn't really, the direction you're going in now, the new direction, you may not have envisioned it going in this direction all the time. So what was the why behind setting up the business in the first place, which you've probably held still core in your core values, but then how many times have you pivoted that as well, like, to go down different avenues in different directions, just because, one, you can, and two, because you have to, because obviously we couldn't control what happened with the pandemic as well.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I set up Nutricate to start with, really because I wanted to help people uh, in a manner that I suppose I enjoyed, and that I felt was right by the people I work with. And I suppose that put the client first. So, um, like, yeah, I suppose it's like this innate thing that I have, where I like helping people. I want to help people. I want to provide a support for people. So I felt that if I could channel that through the business and the work we do, it hopefully would stand to people also. So I suppose the yeah, first and foremost was because I wanted to help as many people as I could. Um, and, some of our core values and beliefs would be honesty and commitment and, work ethic and so on. So they still, and I suppose they are even more evident as the team grows and as we've had to pivot for the likes of the pandemic. Um, because they were also relevant to, well, keeping the client to the center of what we were doing and making sure that that experience wasn't lost, in moving things online and so on and so forth. So yeah, I suppose the client has always been to the pinnacle of Nutrikate, and their experience and meeting their needs. And I suppose as things come our way, we just try to revert back to that. And then within the group, that we're all working towards that goal. And I suppose everyone feels valued in doing so, because that was another thing. Like, um, I love my job for the most part. There's a few days that feel wobbly, but aside
Mm.
from that, I do adore my job. And it was really important for me to create an environment, I suppose, that I wanted to work in, but also anyone who comes through Nutrikate's doors, that they felt the same. Because obviously work takes up a load of our life that has to be done. And I feel like it should be enjoyed. So um, that's another side of things, like making people feel valued and making our team feel like a team, and ensuring that everyone feels like they're contributing and they're, I suppose, uh,
They're
being
valued.
valued. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, is
Yeah, and they're
super
getting a
super
sense of
important.
fulfillment out of their work, like they're making a difference.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and it is important as well to note like that when we're kids, I think we look at up to people that do different jobs and we think they absolutely adore every part of their job. Like there's no part of their job that they hate. There's no drawbacks. But with every job, like you want to pick something that you want to do with your life that for the most part you enjoy, but there's always going to be a drawback. Like there's always going to be
Yeah.
some level of stress within any profession, like especially if you're self-employed, because it's that stress of like, I don't know, not being concrete in where the next payday is coming from or how much it's going to be or chasing it all the time, or being able to switch off and stop chasing it at times and say like, look, it'll happen for me. I don't need to push and work and work and work and burn myself out, because that won't be good either. But it is very important that you're getting some sense of fulfillment and you're feeling valued within your work as well. And then you said there as well, like it's very important to be honest with both the team and with the clients, and keeping the clients at the center of the whole process and keeping it client centered. So has that honesty been a very, very important driver of building those relationships with both your clients and your coworkers?
Yeah, definitely. Like I do, like I mentioned there at the beginning, like I definitely, like, I'm an open book. Like, so it's very difficult for me to not say things how they are. It doesn't come natural, even in terms of sometimes swaying things to maybe make it sound um better. Like it's just not really my jam or my nature. So um yeah, I suppose I'm very honest with both the team and indeed clients. And I think that's important in terms of making everyone apparent, in terms of the direction that they're going, setting setting or meeting expectations, particularly from a client standpoint. I think, at the end of the day, you have to manage the expectations that they have so that they are satisfied, and that they have a sense of where they are on the timeline, that and to the goal that they're looking to reach. So I think laying out that foundation from the get-go makes it a lot easier to move forward, as particularly if different hurdles arise and so on. So yeah, so I think that's been really important, and I think it's very evident within. within the team as well, and the work that we carry out. It's very apparent that that's kind of what's expected then in return.
That's like, I'd be very similar as well, but like that's something that I struggled with, I think, initially, was my communication style. Because I'm honest, sometimes it comes across as blunt. And because I don't beat around the bush and get straight to the point. So I know myself, I had to alter my communication style slightly depending on the client that was in front of me or the person I was working with. Was that something that you consciously had to do as well and still do? Or are you kind of very similar with each and every client, whether they're general population or athletic population, or if it's a coworker as well?
No, I think that's a really valid point in the sense that, you need to know your audience. So, I mean, there's different ways of saying the same thing. So I think, it's really important to note, okay, well, what does this person need from me? Do you know what is the most appropriate way to say this? What is going to resonate with them, and what's going to have the outcome then that you want it to have? So I think knowing your audience, assessing who's in front of you, and I do think that all stems back to, though, the relationship that you've built with that person, that can make your life so much easier from a communication standpoint. When you have a good sense of the person, and you've built that kind of trust with them, I just think that makes life a lot easier. And that stems from taking time to know them, and that can be easier said than done. It depends on the time you're afforded with that person. Like, it's a bit easier in terms of a team environment. I can go out of my way with my team here, as I see fit and when I want to. But sometimes with a client, you don't get that luxury. So I suppose it's just trying to make the most out of the time that you do have with that person, and making it as effective as you possibly can to get to know them, but also to ensure that they keep moving and progressing forward. So yes, super important to know who's in front of you. The same tone, the same language, or the same pace won't work with everyone. So it's like figuring out, okay, well, what has this person identified as being a really important factor for them, and how can I communicate that in a way that ultimately stands by them in the long term? Because with that said, there's certain things that sometimes a client expects or thinks they need, because they don't know any different. So you have to manage that also. So it's it can be tricky, but I do think listening is super important. So as I say ahead of most consultations that I do, it is a chat. I'm going to let you do the work here. I want you to do the talking, and sure, you're going to prompt different questions, and maybe get them to develop answers in different ways to make sure you're on the same page as them. But I like to kind of probe them and get them to start working out where they identify their areas of improvement or their hurdles, and make them aware that, because one big thing is life is busy slash there's a million distractions. Everyone nearly has a phone glued to them, so very few people get to or afford themselves the time to pause and think and figure, take note of, well, where their time is going, or what's actually adding or what's detracting from day to day, what's getting in the way of their goals, what can accelerate them that bit further. And sometimes when you afford them that time and you're listening and they're chatting through it, they start to go, oh geez, yeah, that's probably a problem that I need to get a handle on, and so on. So I think listening is a big factor in terms of building relationships, and you know making maybe the client as well a bit more aware of themselves and their needs, and what really is the goal that they're after, or what is the meaning behind it.
Yeah, the why behind it. And as you said there, like when we're inferring things about our own lives, we don't often sit and reflect and think, why am I thinking this way? Or why do I want to achieve that goal? So then the active listening part of interviewing or just a casual chat, as we might call it, is very, very important, because like a client might say something and just gloss over it completely, but if you probe them on it, they're like, oh, I don't know why I have that thought pattern, or why I think that way, or why I thought that. And it could be a little bit more deep rooted. But with all of this kind of stuff, I'd imagine that you're trying to help them to achieve their own understanding of their own feeling and their own problems, or not problems, but work on, so that then they can take ownership of it themselves and say, okay, I'm going to head out and I'm going to work on this because I know it's a problem, not because Kate told me it's a problem. I've found it myself. And it sounds like you're really helping them as well from an educational perspective, that you're kind of being like, well, you think this way, but in fact, maybe this might be a little bit more rational way of thinking about it, in line with, say, what's going on in the literature. Not that we always go with what's going on in the literature, because life is a little bit more complicated than that, as we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, element there is, life, like it looks so different for everyone. And we all have different learned behaviors or thoughts. And I think it's really important to give an understanding to the client, or help them even work it out for themselves, because life will keep throwing different factors at them. And ultimately, like, our job is to, I suppose, give them the tools that they can then pivot as they need to, that they have a good understanding, that they're not getting bogged down with information that really isn't conducive to anything that they're looking to achieve. So you're trying to, while nutrition is grey in many ways, you're trying to help them work through the mud, so that they have those either principles or tools, and that they have a good understanding for, and that they know when to tap into them, as their goals develop or as their life changes, and ultimately they feel like they've got that control then over that aspect of their life. So yeah, so I think it's preparing them for maybe the different eventualities, and giving them the proper understanding, so that they kind of know where they stand and they've confidence in that.
Yeah, and you touched on there, you're giving them the tools to deal with whatever is thrown at them, essentially. So, and you touched on there as well, you said about changing behaviors. So changing behaviors is quite a difficult thing to do, and changing habits and implementing habits. And as you said, it's not a one size fits all. Like, different things are going to work for different people. But I've heard you talking about the basics before as well, and just a lot of the time we don't need anything more than working on the basics and improving the basics. So what would be the healthy habits surrounding kind of the basics for you, or what are your pillars of nutrition that you kind of, when what you said there, when you go to the helicopter view and you're looking on a macro level, what do you question yourself? Right, are we hitting this? Are we doing this correctly? Are we doing this correctly? Are we doing this correctly? Before you refine it and you go in on a little bit more of a deeper level. I know that's a broad question though, so I apologize in advance.
I hope I can just answer it now. I tend to go off in tangents, as you probably recognized to
I love a
already now.
tangent, don't worry. Head off there,
um,
I'll go with you.
so yeah, so I think, like, I mean, when we look at the fundamentals, or those basics, um, they're not very exciting, like, to be honest. Very often I'm met with, well, what about this supplement? What about that supplement? And so on. And yes, there can be a room for supplements, absolutely. But it's then paring everything back, and it's like, well, actually, this is way off. So some of these areas that I'd be looking at would be overall diet quality. So, what are the food choices that you're making? Is that the best we can do with the kind of resources that we're working with, the environment that we're working with? We might look at things like meal timing. Protein intake is usually not where it needs to be, even irrespective of whether you're just looking to improve your health or you're an athlete, carbohydrate intake is very, very often something that athletes are just not great at, in recognizing what their needs really are. You'd be looking at things like hydration, sleep, not only sleep quantity, we're looking at sleep quality, which again can be a huge factor.
In then
With that,
affecting
then
your habits as well, like the next day, like and
exactly,
what you're eating.
yes, exactly. So, like, I mean, looking at sleep alone, it's like, well, if that's off kilter, or not where it should be, well, then maybe your appetite is higher than what it normally would be if you were, sleeping appropriately and getting high quality sleep. And is that affecting your choices? We know that if you're not getting enough sleep, we tend to want to go for food that's more comforting. So is that getting in the way then of you making maybe healthier or wiser decisions around your meals and your snacks? So, like, there's all these knock-on effects, and generally all these elements are interlinked. So we just look to pair facets like that back. Fruit and veg intake, again, not overly exciting, but it's hugely important. We know that meeting your fruit and veg intake can have really positive effects, both on a health, in a health context. And I think the big thing is sometimes when you're chatting with athletes, like, obviously performance is key. And particularly, like, the more elite you go, like, it becomes obviously even more important. But they're people at the end of the day. So if they're scrimping on one area and their immune system shot and they're getting run down and they're fatigued, like, that doesn't help with performance on any stance. So you're trying to educate someone like an athlete in that respect too, is again to look at the broad picture. It's like, okay, yeah, the supplement sounds real attractive, but it's irrelevant when this isn't going too well and that's not going too well. So and it works both ways. It works with the general population too. But things like that, they're not very exciting, and very often
They're
they
not
they do
sexy.
require effort. Yeah, not sexy. um and they do require effort. Like, changing behaviors, changing habits isn't easy. We've busy lives, we're running from A to B. So what we look to do is, okay, well, what are those little wins? And again, that isn't, anything groundbreaking in, many instances, but over time, all those small things add up and you're in a much better position. So I think a lot of the time when we're working with, different clients, irrespective of the context or what they're looking to achieve, it's pulling apart what their lifestyle, what their day to day looks like. And it's like, okay, well, where are the pockets of opportunity here for you to go that little bit further? And sometimes there's, like, there can be a significant change that they can make that actually isn't too difficult for them, and happy days. But more times than not, it's like, it might be a client who needs to improve their activity levels, for example, and they're dropping their kid off to training. So instead of sitting in the car for the 45 minutes of the hour, they go for a walk. um or making dinner, adding in an extra portion so that you've got something with you when you're on the go the next day. It's just these small things, and again, it'll look different for everyone, but it's sometimes acknowledging that and making the client aware of where those pockets are. um is the battle. Because over time, all those little percentages really do add up, and you're getting one step closer to maybe where you want to be. And that's, I think, something that's super important, is like, yes, maybe we're looking to have 6 or more portions of fruit and veg per day, but if you're sitting at 2 to 3, 6 isn't probably a good option for you right now, because you revert back to type after 2 weeks. So let's go for 4. And that, by getting confidence in that realm, you know that, I suppose, instills them with the belief that, okay, well, I can do this, like, and yeah, you're moving slowly, but you're moving surely. So, and that's, you know important to recognize too. And I think sometimes reminding people of that, like, I mean, how many times have all of us tried to do something, whether it's like, I want to read more, and I've put X and Y target into, um in I said, I'll do this, I'll do that. But if it's too much of a leap from where you're at, it's very difficult to take it. So, maybe starting at 15 minutes a day versus an hour a day might be more beneficial. You don't feel like, you're achieving a massive feat, but over time it adds up. So I think bearing that in mind from a nutritional standpoint and a lifestyle standpoint is super important.
We underestimate the value of marginal gains, like in marginal wins and small wins and habits. And that's because like it's not the attractive thing. Like it's not like sometimes in our heads we think about the end goal as the holy grail. Once I get to that, everything will be solved. And I think people often attribute their health to that. Once I get healthy. But as you just touched on there, like there is no end goal for I'm healthy now. It's all about constant progression and improvement. And success is going to be very, very different for everybody. So it's not a case of I will be healthy if I have 6 or 7 portions of fruit and veg a day when I'm only on one. I will be healthier if I move from 1 to 2, and that's okay. And then once I have 2 refined and I'm down with that, then I can increase the amount that I'm taking in. And like I loved what you said there as well, like because a lot of it, like you did touch on protein intake and you did touch on calorie intake, but like that's not the only thing as well, because I feel like, well, not I feel like, but it is the way of the world now because of social media. Is a lot of people put a lot more emphasis on whether they're in a deficit or a surplus without actually looking at what are they intaking in that deficit or surplus. Are they hitting their protein intake? Are they getting their micronutrients that they need so that they are healthier and it's more sustainable long term? It's not a case of being in a deficit, but you're eating 5 Mars bars every day. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know that's a crude way of putting it, but like, I just think that if we actually focus on developing the habits around food preparation a little bit better, it can have the knock-on effect, as you said there, of us getting into that deficit, the holy grail deficit that we're all searching for all the time. Or it can have the knock-on effect of you feeling healthier. So then, like you said there, you move a little bit more and then you create a deficit a little bit more naturally. So that is something that I would just see. And do you see a lot of people that come into you? Do they focus on that deficit as the number one thing all the time? And sometimes you have to say, look, it's important, but maybe there's some lower hanging fruit, excuse the pun, somewhere else,
Yeah, like again, it'll come down to the individual. Like often we've had people come in and where they're at in terms of uh, maybe their relationship with food or previous experiences with dieting and so on, something like um, the deficit, or even whether you're tracking or not, it mightn't be the most appropriate option for them. So you're putting maybe more of a focus on, well, for example, if they're partaking in an activity that they enjoy, or if they've got other things going on in their lives, which obviously they will, you might focus more so on, well, how are they feeling? Has that have things improved in other facets? And yes, in some ways, like when you do improve overall quality and you have them thinking maybe about better or wiser decisions, from a health standpoint, it can have a positive knock-on effect, and in some cases maybe that'll cause the deficit in and of itself. But I think it's really important to kind of meet the person where they're at and to make sure that they do the unpacking in terms of, well, where is this goal coming from? Like what is the starting point of it, and why is it there? But yeah, like I mean, a lot of the time, like weight loss maybe seems to be the objective, but when you pull things apart, it actually isn't always the case. So I think again, making sure you have a good understanding for where the client's at, and then taking that kind of context to then assess what they really need is really important.
As I was about to say, it's all contextual. But one thing that is contextual, but I know my athletes are probably, if they're listening to this, they're going to be laughing about it because I try and hammer it home all the time. And it's something that you touched on there that I think none of us get enough of and enough high quality of is sleep. And it makes such an impact to absolutely everything pertaining to performance, not just physical performance, but everything in your life, even for general population. And when I actually question people or on their sleep and what time they're going to bed, it's the irregularity, if I can say that word, of that is probably affecting people in more ways than they even understand. And as you said there, it can affect their appetite and their decisions the next day. And if you're only sleeping 6 hours a night and you're like, what time will I take my caffeine tablets before the match? It's probably not the caffeine tablets that are going to make the biggest impact on your performance. So it's something that I hammer home all the time. So is that something that you see yourself, like in a lot of people that come in, and is it something that you would work on with those clients? And is it something that you have down yourself without being too intrusive in the questioning? Because it's very tough when you're self-employed as well, because if you're doing a seminar or presenting late, it can be hard to wind down. I find anyway, if I'm coaching late, it can be hard for me to get to bed at the regular hour than I can. Well, not get to bed, but get to sleep at the exact same hour, because I'm buzzed, like I'm up.
Yeah, fair. No, definitely the sleep thing is an area that, we are trying to hammer home as well. Like similar to you, is like making people aware of its importance and all of the knock-on effects, and indeed all of the benefits that can be obtained from it. Like one thing that we, put focus on, it might sound very obvious with an athlete, but even, general population is performance, and like sleep is a huge contributor to our performance. So, if we're well rested and we're getting the sleep that we need, how does that help our performance the following day? So are you working more effectively and more efficiently? Are you getting your time done within the timeline? Are you getting your work done even within the timelines that you're setting for yourself? And does that mean then you've got more time then for the likes of family, friends, hobbies, because it's not, okay, I was supposed to finish at 5 and I'm actually still here at 6, or I'm going to have to take this home with me, and so on. So I suppose putting it in that frame can maybe help people see its importance. But definitely, like, and again, I think this is maybe a product of probably the environment that maybe we might be subject to, or what maybe society might tell us sometimes. I think it is shifting and I think it's positive, but like I was horrific for sleep, like as in I knew all the benefits and I was discussing it with clients, particularly in the early stages of my career. But because I had so much on my plate, I felt like, and I was looking to excel here and excel there, and I almost was using my lack of sleep as like a badge of honor, like, look how hard I work, like I'm fantastic, when actually, as a result of that mindset, I was nowhere near as productive as I am now, because I would be like nearly nose diving into my laptop. But I only slept 4 hours, so like fair play to me.
I'm such a
And
hard
then
worker.
yeah, exactly. Like, so I think that element of, work smarter, not harder, I think sleep definitely can contribute to that. Um, but yeah, I think sometimes we feel like, the more I suffer, the harder I must be working and the better I must be doing. And actually, when you
That's an
pull it all
Irish
apart,
thing.
yeah, is it an Irish thing? I'm just like, I used to ruin myself with this,
I
like,
think it is.
yeah, and there was no need. So like, and it's something that I do have to remind myself of, because as you mentioned, particularly like being self-employed, trying to run a business, there'd be things that you're not expecting to come up. So you have an agenda that you need to get done, and there could be 10 things added that you never expected. Um, but I am trying to, and I suppose I'm making an active effort to always remember, like, to prioritize things like sleep. and also to allow myself a bit of downtime, to make sure I allow space for that, because that was probably the next thing. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing better on sleep, but I'm working every day a week, every day in the week. Is that really a positive thing either? Am I actually being as productive, and so on. So it definitely is, from a personal standpoint, it's something that I am trying to work on, because I know the benefit in it, and I suppose I'm taking that on board. And I think when you get busy, and life gets hectic, it's very easy, and I think very often people give something like sleep the boot. And in certain instances, you don't have a choice. Like if you have a newborn baby, you don't have a choice. Like, so you just have to do the best you can. And there'd be, different maybe context with, commitments and jobs and so on. So obviously, you need to put something else in play there. But for all of us who really do have the option, and have that power to take control over something like our sleep, I think it's really worth it. And it's like, what's the gain from that? Well, if I do, I mightn't get to, I'm not working maybe until 12 o'clock at night, but the time I am working, am I getting a lot more bang for my buck, like, and I'm not killing myself at the same time, or stressing myself out more than I need to. So yeah, so
Literally.
I think it's a learning curve. Yeah.
Literally killing yourself by not sleeping. And I think
Yeah.
everybody that enters the health and fitness industry does that as well, because it's a bad part of the culture that's been built up, that if you sleep less and work more, you want it more than your competition, or you
Yeah.
want it more than other people in the industry. But I know myself now, having done that for a couple of years or whatever, the next day or in the subsequent days or the subsequent week, if I don't have my sleep on point, my processing time is cat. Like, it's
Yeah.
awful. So what takes me maybe 20 minutes to a half an hour takes me an hour. So then I end up working longer. So I get into a negative kind of cycle, and it just repeats itself. And that has to be the same for other jobs as well. So like, I now place sleep very highly, probably in one of my top 5 values that I hold kind of dear to myself, that I need to have on point. And I make everybody aware that I need this. If I need my sleep, if I'm going to be happy piece that is good crack and has all his work done and can spend time with you, as you said, because time switching off is very, very important when you're self-employed, or in anything, like for anybody. But if you're not efficient in your work, then you're not going to have as much time off. So if you're
Yeah.
not sleeping, you're not going to be efficient in your work. So then you're not going to have as much time off. So by getting to bed on time at a regular hour, and as you said, they're developing the habit, so it's second nature, unless something occurs, like, God forbid, a newborn baby. No, I'm just
God
joking.
forbid.
But I've had to deal with that this year, because there was a few newborn babies in the squad, like in the families in the squad, and it was just amazing to see the chronic issues that were arising for the lads that had young children at home, because they just, like, they can't do anything about it. So then it's about talking to them and developing that connection and relationship, as you said, and saying, how did you sleep last night? And then for me, it's a case of, right, I'm going to reduce their load in training. And for you, it could be a case of talking to them about what time they're going to be eating at post training, or if they're fueling up pre-training, so that they can get to bed the second that Baba's head hits the pillow as well, and they get as much good quality sleep as they possibly can. And I'd assume building those relationships is probably the most important thing in your job. And I'd assume that you've made some great friends over the years from people that would have been complete strangers before you started working with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, and I suppose, like, that's a really nice part of the job, is like many times, like, I don't feel like I'm working. Like, as I said, there's days where, oh my God, yes, I am working and this is so stressful. But a lot of the time, you really do, the people that you come in contact with, and the relationships that you build. I have made friends, whether it's through clients, or it's through backroom teams that you've worked with. Yeah, it's I really do feel blessed in that sense, that I've get to come across fantastic people, and I've built really nice relationships that have stand the test of time, and as a result, I've got some great people in my life. So it's been great.
Do you think because of your sporting background, working as part of a team suited you better? And my other interesting one that I was thinking there when you were talking about playing basketball was, you, if I'm not mistaken, you played at guard, so you were very much conducting the orchestra, as you would
Oh,
say.
I was not a guard. I was post player.
Oh, you're a post player.
I wasn't conducting that orchestra now.
Okay, so that's where the brutality of the no holds barred, get Nutrikate to the top came from, like, and the work ethic, as you said. But do you think you always preferred working as part of a team, and that's why you're enjoying your work so much now, that you get to work with so many teams and so many different teams and different people in different facets, which you've managed to make into one big Nutrikate team?
Yeah, like I definitely think, I suppose, because like when I was 12, I started playing basketball, and that, like, I would have played sport up in primary school and everything, but you'd be doing it almost willy-nilly. I didn't really get the grail as much. Like, I liked it, but I just distinctly, my memory can be shocking, but that is one thing that stands out. It definitely was the turning point for me, was secondary school and basketball. And I suppose one of the big things from that was like I could see how all these different people were all contributing to one main goal, and everyone had something different to add. Like, there's no person on a squad, or there's no person on a backroom team that isn't adding value in some shape or form, because everyone has something to give, everyone has a role to play. So I can see the power in that. So I really, and as well, I mentioned before, like, I'm very aware of maybe things I'm not very good at. Like, I know what I am good at, and I know what I can bring to a table, but I also am very much aware of what I can't do. And that's not to say that you don't try and get better at that. You obviously do, but there'll be people who just have something that you don't have, and that adds to their game, and you've got something vice versa that makes you different. So I suppose I see the power in that dynamic, and that's something that excites me, and that I've reaped rewards with. I've been on teams that have won things. Like, as a result, I've got to travel with my sport. I've gotten to represent my country, like, so I've gotten benefit in that, and that working environment, and I really enjoy that camaraderie, and I enjoy, I suppose, the excitement of it all. So yeah, that definitely is something that I do buzz off being part of a team, and I often, like, I love sport, full stop. And there's things like tennis, and I'd be like, oh Jesus, like, I couldn't imagine being out there on my own on the court. But obviously, in every setup, there is a huge team behind any athlete. Everyone is working in a team, and I think it's quite short-sighted if you were to lose sight of all the people that help you get to where you want to be. Whether you're the only person actioning something on a day, there's a whole facet of work that goes in, and brains and everything behind you. So yeah, I suppose it's very apparent to me how much progress and how much benefit and how much success can lie within rowing in together, and everyone's different contributions adding so much value. So yeah, so it's something that I really buzz off, and greatly excites me. And yeah, I think it's made it easier for me to slot in, and I suppose be collaborative then when I need to be from a working context.
I apologize for the mistake. I saw a number
Oh,
of
you're fine.
pictures of you on the fast break, and I was like, how is she getting all these steals if she's playing in the post? So that's what I thought. So, but I'm conscious of your time now. So we're going to move on to quick fire questions, and just going to throw the very important ones at you. First one is proudest
Okay.
achievement to date.
Do you know what? I actually have to say that my proudest achievement, and I don't know if it's really, if I can fully claim it, but it's actually the people that I have in my life. Like, I, honest to God, feel so grateful for everyone in my life. Like the friends I have, family. I know you can't choose your family, so that's not really an achievement on my part. But the everyone I have around me in that context. I'll include the four-legged friend here too, that my dog. Like I just feel really grateful for the people in my life. So if whatever way I contributed to that, that's an achievement for me, and that's by far the proudest thing in my life.
You're the second person to say that, and you can't choose your family, but you can foster the relationships that are within it, and you can put yourself into those. And that, as you said, like you've developed those relationships and maintained them with your friends, with your family, with everyone. So that's a testament to you as well. So don't undersell yourself there. Next one is favorite athlete of all time.
Um, I would have to say, like, I mean, there's a few people that spring to mind. I think probably I'll stick with closer to home, and I adore Lindsay Peat because she's gone through so many different um sports and just excelled beyond belief, and everyone. So she to me is like a huge role model, and
A
I would have
competitor.
played a competitor too. Like I remember, yeah, absolutely being terrified of her on the basketball court. But she's just, I think, a huge, huge role model in terms of how she continues to push the boat out in whatever she
But she's
puts.
just good at everything. Some people have it
I
all, like,
know,
don't they?
I know her, and I really I just think Kelly Harrington is class, and I've been fortunate enough to be in her presence, at different events, and so on. And she just is, I think, you get, what you see is what you get, and she really kind of um backs up everything that she says, and I just think she's an incredible role model, with a huge amount of passion. So yeah, if yeah, I'll stick with those two.
Second last one. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
Oh, I think um the importance, I suppose, of slowing down. I would say I think that's super important, and as I said, throughout our conversation, there's a lot of things that I've needed to work on, that I know might be, you know, you might have all the information and you're educated yourself, but then putting it into practice, and I suppose, um, prioritizing yourself when you are always thinking of other people, particularly in your work context, like it can be difficult. So definitely over the last 12 months, like uh, improving my own self-awareness and recognizing my own needs and not being afraid to slow down. I think, yeah, it's probably been my biggest take homes, I think.
Yeah, self-focused rather than selfish. We're trying to change that one because you have to be focused
Yeah.
on yourself so that you can give to other people. Last
Yeah.
question. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Uh, I kind of, yeah, I think, uh, back yourself. There'll always be hurdles, but we're a lot more resilient and can take on more than we expect. So I suppose, yeah, go for what you want, irrespective of what anyone else thinks. Um, and keep pushing for it, provided that's what you want. And if things change. There's nothing wrong in pivoting. But I think the don't let your fear or your own kind of insecurity dictate what direction you're going in.
A great lesson in that for everyone. Kate, thanks a million for your time. That was really, really enjoyable. Loads of great insights. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.